Okay.
It's all
Thank you
yours,
so
Dawn.
much. Thank you so much. My name is Triona. I'm an alcoholic, and I'm very happy to be here. And in my vernacular, where I grew up, it would be Céad Míle Fáilte, 100,000 welcomes. Because I grew up in Ireland. I didn't grow up in the States. So this is my week, or this is my day before the day, the big day. And I did grow up in Ireland in a small town north of Dublin called Drogheda. And it's a fishing town and a little business town. And my parents were the local pharmacists, one of three pharmacists in the town. And my father was an alcoholic. My brother was an alcoholic, and I was never going to be like them. And my mother was sadly untreated Al-Anon, but ran the shop and ran the house and ran the whole place. And so I grew up in a very chaotic, we lived above the shop in the middle of town. And when my father walked out the door, he wore a three-piece suit, and everybody, thought he was just a beautiful man, very, well-to-do, very everything. And then when the doors closed, bedlam in that house. And you never knew who was coming home, whether it was going to be happy dad or, cranky dad. And it was a good night. We played music and we sang until somebody got too drunk and had to be carried upstairs. And on bad nights, we all scattered. There was 6 kids, and one of my sisters was had cerebral palsy, so she was severely handicapped. And it was just a house full of stuff going on all the time. The business took up a lot of space. My sister, who was handicapped, took a lot of time, and there really wasn't much attention for the rest of us. And so we competed hard for attention. And I just remember, as at that age and up to my teens, been a lonely kid. There was nobody to talk to. They were too busy. Everybody was too busy. There was always so much going on. And then there was the chaos of not knowing whether my father was going to be okay that night or not, and my brother. And so by the time I reached my teenage years, I was uncomfortable. I was uncomfortable. I was angry at my father. I was angry at my brother. They took charge of everything, and we kind of got the leftovers. And I was angry at my mother for putting up with it. And so I had all this stuff, bubbling up inside me and nowhere to put it. And, I was brought up in a convent school with a bunch of nuns, some of whom I was related to. So it was not okay for me to be angry or anything else. I needed to be a good girl and behave myself and, move on. And so I got into high school and got even more uncomfortable. And I think it was about 14 or 15 when I first started drinking. And I just remember it was fun. It relaxed me. It made me comfortable in my own skin. It made me, it took away my shyness. It took away my fear. And we had a little beach town that we used to go out to and get drunk. And it was a great time for a while. It was a great time in those years. And school, I just got through. I barely got through. It's not easy to study in school when you have an alcoholic home and chaos going on. So anyway, by the time I was 18 or 19, I knew somewhere in my brain that there was something wrong with my drinking. I knew it wasn't okay, but I also knew that I needed it. I already knew I needed it. I needed that to be comfortable. I needed it to function in the world. So I made a decision somewhere along the way. It's like, okay, this is the way it is. I just have to figure it out. I got to figure it out. I got to go ahead and do the things that everybody is supposed to do, go to college, get married, have children. They were the main priorities. And, just function. And so that's what I was trying to do. And I desperately wanted to get out of my home, but I had no self-esteem to feel like I could do anything for myself. I didn't know what I wanted to do in college. And the only thing I had going for me was I played piano. I played piano and I sang. And I used to do that up in my room quietly when, that was my escape. I'd play along with the radio. And if I learned the song before the song was over, I won. And so I ended up training my ear, and I could play anything from the radio. I could play anything at school. And so I got a little reputation there. And by the time I got out of high school, I started playing in bands. And now I grew up with James Taylor and the Eagles and all those guys. And so I grew up playing folk music. We used to play folk music in the church, the folk masses, and it was fun. It was a lot of fun. And we'd get drunk in the sacristy afterwards, in the back of the house, in the priest's house. But anyway, I met a guy there. I met somebody who was in the same group that I was in playing. And he was one of those guys that was a kind of a take charge guy. And I knew if I just hooked onto him, he would fix me. He would get me out of there. And he had grown up in an alcoholic home too. So the two of us wanted to get out of there. We wanted to get out of our hometown. We wanted to get out of Ireland if possible. We wanted to go have adventures. And so we entered a competition, myself and this guy and another friend of ours. We entered Ireland's little version of American Idol. And we won. We won this competition. And then we got, okay, we can do this. We can earn our living playing music. But we're not going to do it in Ireland. We want to go to the States. We want to go to California because that's where the streets are paved with gold, And so that's where we decided we were going to. And so the three of us, I married that guy, and myself and him and another guy, with three of us arrived in the States in 1980, May of 1980. It was a great time. We started out in Philadelphia, and we started traveling, playing music. We had nothing but 2 guitars and a keyboard. And there used to be these companies where you could drive cars across the country that needed to be delivered. And they'd pay for the gas. They'd give you money for the gas, and they'd give you your route to go on. And we would pack up the car, and we'd take it wherever it was supposed to go. And then we'd go to the nearest bar, and we'd say, can we play for free? And by the end of the night, we'd have a tip jar full of money. Somebody would take us out for dinner. Somebody would let us stay at their house, and they'd give us a tour of the neighborhood the next day. And we'd move on. And it was fabulous. It was absolutely fabulous. And so we started traveling. By the end of the first year, we managed to buy a car. And by the end of the second year, we had a manager. And, I forgot to say, we started out playing folk music, but they didn't want to hear folk music. As soon as we talked, they wanted to hear Irish music. So we said, well, we don't really know a lot of Irish music. They said, well, we'll hire you if you do. So we became an Irish band, not by choice, but by necessity. What do you know? Because, people loved us. And so by the end of the second year, we went into the studio and we made an album. Remember albums? So we did the whole studio gig and made an album, and then we started traveling around playing and selling from the stage. And it was magic. It was magic for 3 little Irish people traveling across the States, over and over, taking different routes every time. And we had a great time, except for the fact that I was trying to maintain myself alcoholically. I was trying to keep a lid on this disease that was growing inside me. And at this point, I also had a secondary disease. I had an eating disorder. I was bulimic. And I'm living in a motel with 2 men and myself. You can tell, you know how much work that was, trying to hide that stuff. So we'd be in bars, and my husband would say to me, okay, you can have 4 light beers tonight, 1 per set. And I'd be like, oh yeah, sure, absolutely. And about the 3rd set, I'd be pie-eyed, falling off the stage, kind of pie-eyed. And it was just, as this thing was getting better and we were making more money and things were getting more successful, I was getting worse. I I couldn't stop it. And I remember sitting in a motel in the bedroom in a motel one time, somewhere in the middle of Peoria, I think we were. And thinking to myself, I can't stop. I can't keep going. I can't tell anybody. If I tell somebody, they're just going to tell me to stop. I can't stop. And I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified, and there seemed no solution. There was nothing I could do. So, you know, as it happens with alcoholics, as things get worse, we start to lose things in our lives. We start to lose things that are important to us. My marriage was important to me. My husband was important to me. And he just got tired. He got tired of waking up beside a drunk every night, waking up in the morning beside somebody who was sick and miserable and depressed and, bloated, and, staying on stage was getting harder. Performing was getting harder. I was so unhappy and I was so exhausted, and I wanted to keep going so bad. So anyway, my husband met somebody else who wasn't bloated and depressed and drinking too much. And that started the whole ball going down, getting bigger and bigger. So anyway, he ended up, the band, one night I was, actually it was probably pretty close to St. Patrick's Day, and we had a big gig. And I just remember playing, and all of a sudden everything started going white, and I was thinking, oh God, don't let me fall. Don't let me pass out now. Please don't pass out now. And the next thing I know, they were hauling me off the stage by my feet. And I remember him screaming, get her out of here. I wish I'd never met her. Only he didn't say it so politely. And that was the end of the band. That was it. They said, we can't keep doing this. You need help. You need to go do something. So I ended up, that was, I don't know what year that was 84, beginning of 84. So anyway, I decided I'd go home. And I would try and clean myself up, I would get help. I would do whatever I needed. So I went back to Ireland and went to the house we lived in, our own house that we had at home. And I just drank more there. I just couldn't stop drinking. And I finally called my brother, who was a bad alcoholic, but he knew somebody who was sober. And the two of them came and got me, and they brought me up to Dublin. And so the first meeting I went to was in Dublin. And I remember it. I still remember this old lady talking to me. And I remember thinking, oh my God, she's never going to shut up. I had a half pint of vodka in my purse, and I desperately needed a drink. And she just kept talking. But anyway, that was my first experience of an Alcoholics Anonymous in any way, shape, or form. And then I went down and visited my sister in Cork and went to another meeting there, and it was in the church basement. And there was a bunch of old men, and they looked absolutely miserable. And I thought, no, I can't do this. This is just pathetic. I can't do this. So I thought, I'm going back to the States. I'm looking a bit better. I lost some weight. I'm just, I'm not going to drink. I'm just going to do my best. And so I fly back to the States, back to Philadelphia, and walk into the bar where the band is playing. And my husband takes one look at me and says, what are you doing here? And I thought, oh, crap. He doesn't want me here. It's like, this is almost beyond me. I didn't know what to do at that point. It's like, oh, now what do I do? So anyway, I couldn't go home. They'd give me a big party when I left. I couldn't stay there because he was there with his girlfriend. And so I remembered California. I had fun in California, and I could stand the heat. I couldn't stand the heat on the East Coast. It was too much for me. But so I ended up flying back to California, and I had a couple of names in my little black book from back then, and a guy picked me up and took me to his house. And he said, I have a little spare room here. It's my office, but I can let you stay there and see what happens. And so he had a piece of foam he put down on the floor. That was my mattress. He had a little 13-inch black and white TV that he let me use. And I had my little keyboard, and there I was in California in the middle of 84. And I was too terrified at this point. I couldn't play anymore. I shook too bad. I couldn't even dream of getting on a stage at that point. I needed to work. I didn't know what to do. I took a walk one day, and I came across this place. They were building this restaurant bar called Silky Sullivan's. and it's in California. It's in Fountain Valley in California. And so I went in and asked, could I have a job? And they hired me because I had an accent. And I started working there. And I remember at that time, one night sobbing, I called Alcoholics Anonymous, and they sent somebody to get me and took me to a meeting. And at that point in time, and but they took me along with another newcomer. And when we got to the meeting, by the time we got to the meeting, we had bonded. He was cute, I was lonely, and we started going to meetings together. And we lasted about 90 days before we hated each other. And we bought a book together. So I decided, okay, I'm going to give him the book. No, I'll keep the book. He can stay at the meetings. I can figure this out. And I was gone again. And then I went on. I was working at Silky's as a waitress. And in May of 85, May 23rd, 85, or it was May 27th, 85, I ended up, when you get so uptight from needing a drink that you think you're going to snap. You don't have, it's like, all I need is just to relax for a minute. If I could just relax for 1 minute. And I remember I walked into the walk-in freezer at Silky Sullivan's, and they had those old box wines, big box wine. And I got one of the water glasses and I filled it with the box wine, and not even a thought about it. I just downed that whole thing. And I can still to this day remember how good that went down and how relieved I was. That's one of the reasons I know I'm an alcoholic, because I can still remember that. If I were to pick up a drink today, I would get that feeling again and I'd be off and running. So anyway, I downed that glass, and maybe a normal person would have just had one and been relaxed. Not so for me. It was like, I remember the second one, and that's all I remember until somebody asked me, can you move your neck? And I'm like, and I open my eyes and I'm in my cocktail waitress outfit and there's blood, and I'm in a car, and I'm in a crash car, and there's a lot of cars, and the police are asking me, can I move my neck? And so they hauled me out of the car, and I kept saying I hadn't been drinking, even though I could smell myself. And they took me off to the hospital. And when I left that hospital that night, I had a DUI, drunk under the influence, and they let me go, and there was nobody to call. I left that hospital, and I remember standing outside the hospital, and my shoe was broken. My cocktail waitress outfit was covered in blood. And I had, my purse was gone, my car was gone. And I remember standing there, and there was nobody to call. That was the loneliest moment of my life. It was like, there's nobody. Everybody's gone. Everybody's gone. Everybody is tired of me. Everybody's done. And I went back to that little room I was staying in, and I was afraid to leave it for 3 days. I couldn't leave it. I was terrified. I will not make it past a liquor store. I won't make it past a liquor store. And so I holed up in the room, and I remember looking in the mirror, and I had black eyes from the car crash. And I remember thinking, I just wish you were dead. I just wish I could die, because I can't do this life. So anyway, I remember watching that little black and white TV, and there was nothing but war movies on. And it was like, what is wrong with these people? All they want to do is watch war movies. Well, it was Memorial Weekend coming up. That's why there was all the war movies. I didn't know. So I just, I finally, I ended up calling Alcoholics Anonymous again, because I was so tired. I was so beat. I was so lonely. The loneliness was destroying me. And so they came and picked me up again, and they took me to a meeting. And this time they didn't pick anybody else up, thank God. And we got to this, some kind of a recovery place. And I remember sitting in a corner. I could barely lift a coffee cup to my hand. And there was a woman there, and she was tall, and she was blonde, and she was dressed in nice light colored clothing. And I remember thinking she must be visiting somebody. And then they started the meeting, and it was a speaker meeting. And what do you know? She was the speaker. And she got up there and she started talking, and I just remember thinking, oh my God, I can't believe the things she's saying. She's saying the things that are going on in my mind, the things that have, that I have been hiding all these years. And it just blew me away. And somebody had a DT seizure in the meeting that night, and they called the paramedics, and we're all scattered around, and we ended up standing beside each other and talking. And she gave me her phone number. She says, call me tomorrow. Let me know how you're doing. And there's where God entered. I had that willingness. I had that moment of willingness where it was like, I was so tired. I was so lonely. And she gave me her phone number, and I called her the next day. And we talked, and it felt like I hadn't talked to anybody in years. And she became my sponsor. She's still my sponsor today, 35 and a half years later. And she still has what I want. And she took me to this meeting, and some of the people in this meeting tonight were at that meeting when I got there. Francis, Vicky, Pales, everybody, Lindy. There was a bunch of people there, and it was this big giant meeting, a podium participation meeting, and it was full of couples, there were kids, there were single people, there were old people, there were young people. It was like this massive energy. And I was terrified. I was so withdrawn and terrified. But these people, everybody seemed to know each other. Everybody seemed to like each other. They were laughing. They were having fun. I couldn't understand why they were all laughing. This was a horrible business. And, but, I went to the meeting, and they took my number. They welcomed me. They tried to hug me. I was terrified. And I remember my sponsor saying, take her with you. There was some party going on, somebody's sober birthday. Take her with you. I'm like, no. But they took me with them. And I remember being in some strange person's house and trying to hide behind the refrigerator, and they kept finding me and trying to hug me again. It was horrible. It was horrendous. It was terrifying. And it was like manna from heaven. It was so what I desperately needed. And that began my journey with the Huntington Beach downtowners. And they were a fun lot, and here's God again in my world. I would not have been able to stay if it hadn't been fun. I desperately needed to laugh. I desperately needed to have fun. I desperately needed to be cared for again. And so, within 6 months, I think at first I was their coffee maker, did the ashtrays and the coffee cups. And that was great because I didn't have to talk to anybody because I was busy, I was busy. And then later they made me the secretary, which terrified me. This is the same person who used to sign autographs from a stage, and I'm terrified because they made me their secretary and I had to talk at the stupid podium. And, but it connected me. It got me connected in Alcoholics Anonymous, got me in the door, got me busy, got me moving, got me active, got me my sponsor. I'd call her in the morning and she'd say, did you take a shower yet? No. She said, get in the shower and call me when you're done. Okay. Did you do your laundry? No. Do your laundry and call me when you're done. Okay. Are you going to a meeting tonight? Yes. Is there somebody picking you up? Yes. It was like, I was like a little automaton, just, okay, tell me what to do next. And so started my journey. And what a journey. I had no idea what these steps were about. I just knew that if I didn't do them, I was going to get drunk. And so I did them really fast the first time around. It was like, okay, whatever. And I remember doing my fourth step with my sponsor on the beach. And it was like the dam broke. It felt like I had never talked before. And I poured it all out. And it opened the door for a little bit of love to come in. And that's what I got from the Huntington Beach downtowners. And Sunset Beach Thursdays in Sunset Beach. I saw some of my Thursdays people are here too. I used to get the bus up to Thursdays and go to lunchtime meetings, and then I'd go to work at Silky's at night. And I used to see the drunks in the bar at Silky's crying and whining. And then I'd see the drunks in Thursdays at lunchtime crying and whining. And I was like, oh, it's the same people. Only one bunch are not drinking and one bunch are. Well, guess what? The ones who are not drinking, I saw their lives change. But you go back to the bar at night, nobody's lives are changing. They're just getting worse. And so I kind of came in and was hanging on the fence for a minute. And then I walked in and it was like, I want what these people have. I'll do whatever they want me to do because I want what they have. And, you know, that was my first higher power. It was a group of drunks in Huntington Beach and Sunset Beach. And I did what they told me to do. And I stayed working at that bar for 2.5 years. And I didn't have to get drunk. And I also ended up getting back into music after a few years through Alcoholics Anonymous. I got involved in the Orange County Convention and sang one of their songs at the convention on their big night out, and I had to walk out on stage and sing and play that keyboard again, and I was absolutely petrified. And I only did it because Alcoholics Anonymous told me I could do it again. And I remember coming off that stage, and there was a big bunch of those Huntington Beach downtowners waiting for me to tell me they were proud of me. And it was like, there's that manna from heaven again. They love me. They like me. Oh my God, I'm not leaving for anything. So it's been, you know, that's what I got in Alcoholics Anonymous. I got the love and I got the help I needed. And I ended up not staying in music. I got back into music for a few years and played rock and roll, which is what I really wanted to do, and had a great time. And then in 93, I ended up having what was it, 94? 94. I had a brain hemorrhage. I had a brain hemorrhage and a massive seizure on the Strip in Las Vegas, and ended up in hospital for about 3 days. And at the end of that, with no medical insurance, because I'm a musician, you know, we're just kind of playing around and we're just doing our thing. But at the end of that, I kind of thought, maybe I need to get a job. Maybe I'm not going to be the next Madonna. So I ended up getting this tiny little, strange little job at a high school as an instructional aide with a bunch of handicapped kids. And I do believe that God puts you exactly where he wants you to learn exactly what you need to learn. And I had resentments because my sister, who was the handicapped cerebral palsy sister, she sucked the air out of the room in my world. And I lost so much attention because she got so much attention. And they put me with these severely handicapped kids and in this school. And I was like, no, I can't do that. I can't do that. Well, I ended up there 5 years, and that was the most joyous, fabulous job I ever had. Those kids were extraordinary. If you ever want to learn how to get grateful, hang out with some kids in wheelchairs and with, you know, brain tumors and different things like that to see how gracious and beautiful they are and full of life, and how they make the best of everything they have was extraordinary. And so I had my own little American Idol class with those kids, and we put on performances and had a great time. And then that inspired me to go back to school, because those teachers I worked with, I couldn't believe how selfless they were. You know, I'm all about applause, please. I need a lot of applause. I need a lot of attention, you know. And here's these teachers, and it's all about the kids, not about them. And anyway, it's inspired me to go back to school, and I did that. And today I'm a high school counselor. And that was not in my plan. That was not in my plan. And I've been working at that job for a long time now. And COVID has been a very strange time for us this year, but I love my job. I found out that giving made me feel so much better than getting. What a strange idea. What a strange thing to find out, that it was better to give than to get. So anyway, that's my job story. And I love my job still. I'm ready to retire, but I love my job. On the relationship side, not my best scenario. I have not done well in that area. After I got divorced, when I was about 5 years sober, I got in a relationship that was not a terribly good one. Francis will remember this one. And I could not leave that relationship, and I needed to leave it probably after the first date. And I lived off the first date for about 9 years. Pretty bad. Anyway, that drove me into our sister program, Al-Anon. And so I'm now a 25-year member of Al-Anon too. And I learned how to leave that relationship eventually. And then I did something very strange. I found another alcoholic man. Who'd have thunk it? But this was a nicer one. This was a nicer alcoholic man. This was an alcoholic man who was actually a sweetheart, a really lovely person, a beautiful heart, kind, loving, and made me really happy. Unfortunately, he struggled with sobriety too. And I was living with him from about 2005 till 2009. And Thanksgiving 2009, I was away for the weekend, came back and found him dead from a drug overdose. And stop it, Nancy. Get me going. And that almost destroyed me. It almost destroyed me. I was angry. I was angry at God. I was angry at everything. It was like, why? Why would you not get him sober? He was a good guy. You know, there's other people that you could take, but he didn't need to go. He was a good guy. And I was just angry at God. And so I shut down for probably a good year. I didn't want to talk in meetings. I didn't want to do anything. I had stopped sponsoring people. I was just like, the way I remember thinking about it and thinking, life has just silenced me. Life has silenced me. So after about a year of barely attending meetings, not talking at meetings, not sponsoring anybody, and just generally sitting in my very angry place that I was, my sponsor got in my face, and she's not a get in your face person. And she said, I'm worried about you. I'm worried about you. I need you to start going back to basics. I need you to start going back to what you did when you were new. And by her tone of voice alone, I got scared. I thought, oh, it was like I woke up. And so I started doing some of the things I did when I was new in sobriety. I took a panel on. I started doing panels. I started doing call forwarding for central office. I got involved in GSR. And when I was doing one of my panels, I had a girl come up to me after a panel and say, would I sponsor? And I remember thinking, oh, God, no, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. But I liked her. She was very scientific and she was very smart and up in her head. And I thought, I like that. It's a challenge. So anyway, I took her on as a sponsee and just totally fell in love. She was just a doll. And then more women showed up. And I remember thinking at one point, okay, Triona, this is it. You're either in or you're out. You cannot be full of shit and pretend, you know, you believe in what you're talking about. You either are in or you're out again. And I came back in. I was in. And those women saved me. And there's a few of them here tonight, and they saved my life, literally saved my life. It brought the joy back into my life. It brought the inspiration back into my life. It brought the love of Alcoholics Anonymous back into my life, and the faith in God back into my life. It's a slow journey, but it brought me back. And I'm so grateful for that, and so grateful for the service in Alcoholics Anonymous that saved my life. So today I am really I just love Alcoholics Anonymous. I think it's an unbelievable program and that we are so lucky to have it. It's been a very strange year. I haven't liked it at all. I live alone, myself and my dog, and it's long nights when you live alone. So if anybody else is on here and you live alone, believe me, you have my empathy. You know, I'm on the phone as much as I can, but it's been very hard to not be in person and not get the hugs. And I have my posse, I have my girls, my posse that I hang out with that I'm super grateful for, and my sponsor now, Non. And I am so thrilled to see some of the faces I see here tonight that I haven't seen in a long time. And, I have been loved back to life in Alcoholics Anonymous and continue to be today because I'm easily derailed. And thank God I have strong women around me who put me back on track and say, hey, you're leaning a little left there. Come on back over here. And I am just really grateful to be sober. And I don't know what else to say except thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me here. And happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody.